were some extraordinary things in her memoir, like the Queen dies, and her first response is, "Why me?" As if it's all about her. Really bizarre.
We're going to move on and talk about Liz Truss now. She's very much in the news again, and this is because she's written a book, 10 Years to Save the West. It's been published today. The former Prime Minister discusses her 49 days in office and how her radical thinking went down and how the deep state stopped her. She's been speaking to Harry Cole on the Sun's show, Never Mind the Ballots, about some of her ideas. She, you will know, wants to sack the Governor of the Bank of England, get rid of the Office of Budget Responsibility, and also leave the European Court of Human Rights.
I think we need to leave the ECHR, but I don't...
With or without a referendum? No more referendums, please.
No more referendum. I agree with you.
But you'd need a massive mandate from the people to do that.
You would, but it's not enough just to leave the ECHR.
What else do you need to leave?
We've got to abolish the Supreme Court.
Bring it back into the Lords? Or?
Yes, bring it back into the Lords.
I presume the OBR is pretty high on your hit list as well.
That's definitely... Although, and what the OBR do with their modelling is they actually encourage governments to have higher immigration. Yeah. Because they essentially try and force governments to trade off tax cuts for immigration rises. But the other thing, we've got to leave the ECHR, abolish the Supreme Court and abolish the Human Rights Act.
Well, Liz Truss is probably unlikely to ever be Prime Minister again, but who knows? But are her ideas still influential? William Hague, how seriously should we take Liz Truss, her book and her ideas, do you think?
Well, one should always listen to a former Prime Minister. I've written in the past my views about that period in which, as you will recall, I think it was a disaster, that 49 days of Liz Truss's premiership, and that the responsibility for that mainly lies with her for that. But of course, people will and should always listen to former prime ministers. It's a different kind of conservatism that you've heard her speaking about there than my kind of conservatism, because I think at the heart of conservatism is support for strong institutions and the rule of law, and for when we change things, changing them carefully and with plenty of thought in advance. And so I don't go for that sort of set of policies that she was talking about there. But she will be a voice. She's been prime minister even for a very brief period, and of course she will be a voice for a long time to come.
It sounded a bit like she kind of wants another bite at the cherry, so to speak. Do you think that's a good look?
I'm not in general in favour of former leaders having another go at at being the leader, having experience being the leader of the party myself, and I certainly never wanted another go. And it's definitely not a good idea to have another go if it was a particularly catastrophic episode when you were the leader. So no, I don't think that would be a good idea. But, there is a debate. Let's acknowledge there is, as in all political parties, and it's often happened in the Labour Party, there is a debate about its future orientation. And she's shown she's going to be part of that debate. I will happily take the other side of the debate.
Marianne, whenever we discuss Liz Truss, there are people who seem to want to discuss either her ideology or her personality, the persona of Liz Truss, because they find it quite interesting, shall we say. Which one interests you more?
Oh, the ideology interests me more. But I suppose the persona is wrapped up in it because she seems to believe that whatever she believes is what all Conservatives believe. And actually, there was a very interesting poll done today by More in Common about the smoking ban, which found that not only did, she said that no Conservative, really should believe in this. And yet, not only do 2/3 of voters support it, but 70% of those who voted Conservative in 2019 actually support it too. So, I think her ideology is wrong, but it's also interesting that she has such a sort of rigid persona that she can't even she can't even sort of separate her own views from those of the party. She assumes that if she believes something, that must be the Conservative way to act and to believe.
Many people talk about, and it's always interesting actually to talk and reflect on former leaders, former prime ministers, and how they act after. Because we're talking about Ben Wallace, for example. Ben Wallace, and to a degree as well, William Hague. Once you're out of office, you are able to speak more freely, and then you kind of get the real personality of the person. Liz Truss is no longer a prime minister. It's been a while since she was, but she doesn't have much in the way of self-reflection, self-awareness. And I wonder, is that always a character? Is that a character defect, or is that a character strength, do you think, Marianne?
I think it's a character defect. There were some extraordinary things in her memoir, like the Queen dies and her first response is, why me? As if it's all about her. Really bizarre. There are so many unself-aware things in this book. And I think it's very important to be self-aware. Some prime ministers are much more self-aware than others. I was very struck by Tony Blair when he was prime minister, that he genuinely welcomed criticism. And I think that's a good sign of self-awareness, that you're constantly prepared to change your view of what you're doing according to outside influences, very much the opposite of Liz Truss. And, if you ever went to see him when he was prime minister, almost the first question he'd ask was, how do you think I'm doing and what am I doing wrong? That, I think, is a very self-aware way to approach running a country. Yeah.
He never changed, because he was asked many times. He never changed his view on Iraq, though, did he?
No, there's some things he didn't. And I'm not saying that he was all over the place. He was prepared to accept criticism and sometimes to act on it, but not always.
Are you surprised, William, she's not more humble? Because she has been literally humbled and she doesn't seem to experience humility.
I am a bit surprised. I think it takes quite an effort to go through what she went through without thinking that there might be something that you did wrong yourself. It's really a very strong mental effort you must have to make to do that, other than not communicating things properly. And some of us were describing at the time things that were obviously a serious mistake, particularly when she became prime minister and excluded everybody in the Conservative Party who hadn't supported her from the cabinet. That was an immediate sign that this was going to be a disaster, because every prime minister, Margaret Thatcher, even really strong prime ministers, have always included their former opponents, tried to bind people together. It's a basic political instinct. And not to do that, showed that it was very quickly going off the rails. And that's a personal decision. The decision to do that is the decision of that prime minister. Yeah. So there is a big personal responsibility there. And it is a pity, as Marianne says, really, you have to be more self-reflective and more open to criticism to have real credibility for the future.
Yeah, well said, both of you, I think. Marianne, William, stay with us. We got flags celebrating 21 sexualities and identities to discuss. Does that matter? Are we getting cross? We're not getting that cross about it. Are we getting a bit cross over nothing? This is Times Radio Breakfast with Asma Mir and Stig Abel in association with Nationwide. A good way to bank.
Matt Chorley on Times Radio.
In How to Win an Election, Peter Mandelson, Polly Mackenzie and Daniel Finkelstein on the art of expectation management. Is there any way talk of a Labour landslide might help the Tories? And in How to Save Liz Truss, we've read her book so that you don't have to. We unpack her politics, deconstruct her contradictions and ask if she really thinks the taxpayer should have been sorting out her hairdos.
Matt Chorley, this morning from 10 on Times Radio.
Do you know an ambitious business leader? Someone who is leading a growing UK business, creating a great place to work, contributing to a sustainable future, or expanding internationally? We want to hear from you. Nominate yourself or someone else for the LDC Top 50 Most Ambitious Business Leaders 2024. Visit ldc.co.uk/radio to nominate by Monday the 29th of April. Winners will be revealed in the Times in October. ldc.co.uk/radio.
Happy birthday to you. Okay, Nathan, you're next. Happy birthday to you.
Mum, my birthday's not till next month. Like getting your money's worth? Grab a McDonald's Save a Meal deal. That's a cheeseburger or mayo chicken, medium fries and drink for just $3.99. Also available via Just Eat until the 7th of May. Delivery price uplift and fees apply. Price may vary.
Download the free Times Radio app from the App Store or Google Play today. Asma Mir and Stig Abel on Times Radio Breakfast with Nationwide. Everywhere Nationwide has a branch, it promises to still be there until at least the start of 2028. For verification, visit nationwide.co.uk/ourpromise.
9:24 Times Radio Breakfast, talking things over with William Hague and Ann Sieghart. Cancel culture, wokeism, problematic behaviour. We talk about these things often, but is there a lack of comprehension about what they actually mean? Can we even agree on that? Pictured in today's Times is an NHS hospital which displays 21 different flags to celebrate 21 different sexualities. Everyone is welcome here is the tag, which is utterly laudable and platitudinous. But do we need 21 sexual identities? What does that actually mean? Ann Sieghart, what do you make of this? Because I think I'd like people who just do whatever they like. But this also winds people up because it feels that everything has to be a sort of badge in a way that doesn't seem to associate with reality. What do you make of it?
It's a generational difference, isn't it? I think our generation doesn't feel the need to label ourselves quite so specifically as Gen Z and maybe millennials. But if that's what they want to do, let them do it. It doesn't actually bother me. I don't understand why people get so worked up about it.
I mean, the things like demi-romantic, romantically attracted only after becoming emotionally close. I mean, that just sounds like just being in a relationship. And then there's these sort of arbitrary things like neutrois has a gender identity, but it's neither masculine nor feminine, which is different to non-binary, which does not identify as male or female, and agender, which does not identify with a gender. It feels mad, sort of mad dancing on a pin.
Well, it is a narcissism of small differences, isn't it? But if that's what makes them feel good, I don't care. It's not doing anyone any harm.
Should it be on the NHS, William? Should it be when you walk into a hospital? I just wonder whether when you wander into a hospital in Stoke, do you want to look up and see 21 flags of sexualities, or does it matter?
No, you don't want to look at that. I think they've clearly got a bit too much money in their PR budget or something like that. And you're not going. Is anybody going to turn up at a hospital needing help and say, "Oh, wait a minute, they've only got 19 flags up there. Mine's missing, so I have to go down to Stafford." I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And we have some very nice flags in this country, which public buildings can fly. We've got the Union flag, we've got the England flag, we've got the Welsh flag, which I fly at my house. And those flags are...
From your turret.
Those flags are inclusive of everybody in Britain, in England, in Wales. So that's enough, really, without having 21 varieties at a hospital.
Yeah, Debbie says, doesn't this break everyone up into loads of disparate communities, and actually we need to be more together rather than apart, which I think is the sentiment that you're making there.
And Matthew's also said, wasn't everyone welcome at the hospital before? What is the NHS up to spending money on flags? But I think Ann probably hit the nail on the head, really, where she said that it's a generational thing, and it's just the way things are kind of done. Not for everyone, but it wouldn't strike an older generation to do this, but it does for another generation, and perhaps that is the difference. We're going to talk quickly about smoking, because MPs are going to vote today about banning smoking. This is the Tobacco and Vapes Bill, which would make it illegal for anyone born after 2008 to ever buy cigarettes, and would clamp down on e-cigarettes. Not all cabinet ministers are happy, including Kemi Badenoch, who's reportedly going to vote against the ban. Marianne, what do you think? Are you surprised or not surprised that actually this is something, most people would say smoking, it's a bad thing, it should be discouraged. The fact that certain children of a certain age will never be able to buy them legally, this is a good thing. But yet this idea of the nanny state still prevails for some people. Does that surprise you?
Well, I think, one of the functions of government is to help improve our health. So I don't see it as a nanny state, or if it is a nanny state thing, I don't see it as a problem. More than 80% of adult smokers regret having taken up the habit. And they almost all take up the habit when they are children or teenagers or, very young. And so if we can stop children and teenagers smoking in the first place, they will be grateful to us in later life. And it's not as if smoking has any additional benefits the way that alcohol does. I mean, alcohol is a great way of just sort of freeing us up and helping us have a bit more fun and, making social life more enjoyable. Now, I'm not suggesting we drink in excess, but moderate drinking, is not just perfectly all right, but actually quite beneficial to our mood, I think. Smoking has no benefits whatsoever, but it is fiercely addictive. So if you can stop people being addicted by stopping them taking it up in the first place, that can only be good news.
William Hague, this is Rishi Sunak's big kind of flagship legislation. It could be his big legacy as well. Is it disappointing that some Conservatives, some cabinet ministers potentially, including Kemi Badenoch, may vote against it?
No, it's a free vote on the Conservative side. I think it would be surprising if there was complete unanimity about this, because, of course, one can make a libertarian argument against it. And if you go right back to the early 1960s, when it started, the science that smoking was very bad for people's health just started to come out. A lot of people were completely against doing anything at all about smoking, taxing it or saying that or anything. So there's always been a libertarian wing, and that's always operated in the Conservative Party. But I don't think there will be a huge number of such MPs, from what I've heard. And I think they have to remember, since they're all people who believe in lower taxes as well, that if you don't have to pay for the future health care of all those people who will be massively damaged by smoking from a young age, well, that's one of the ways you might get some lower taxes in the end.
Yeah, good point. Great to speak to both of you. Thank you for joining us. That's Ann Sieghart and William Hague.